I got an A in French. Julia got straight A's in high school.
A demands £500, B offers £100.
We have a problem.
There was a hole in the fence.
Suddenly they heard a loud bang.
Would you like a sandwich? I want to train to be an engineer.
He's a really nice man.
Take a look at this.
It needs a good clean.
One of his daughters had married a Rothschild.
£1,000.
A dozen eggs.
You'll have to wait an hour or two.
There were a lot of people at the party.
A few weeks from now, I'll be in Venice.
You have caused a great deal of trouble.
I get paid once a month.
The eggs cost $2 a dozen.
A square has 4 sides.
A child needs love and affection.
I'll fetch you a cup and saucer.
Does everyone have a knife and fork?
There was a beating of wings overhead.
Bernice became aware of a humming that seemed to come from all around her.
Candidates must have a good knowledge of chemistry.
Use a good cheese to make the sauce.
Plants that grow well in a moist soil.
Can I get you a coffee?
Renwick went to the bar and ordered a beer.
An early Rembrandt. She was hailed as a new Marilyn Monroe. There's a Mr. Tom Wilkins on the phone.
We arrived in England on a cold, wet Sunday in 1963.
I can't remember a Christmas like it.
Allowed. Alive.
With nerves all a-tingle.
A bed.
Afar.
A moral.
Atypically.
The history of art from A to Z.
Hiring a car was the best way to get from A to B. We're going to find a restaurant and buy a meal. That's plan A.
She decided to stay on at school and do her A-levels. I took maths, physics, and chemistry at A-level.
How could she abandon her own child?
We had to abandon the car and walk the rest of the way.
Fearing further attacks, most of the population had abandoned the city.
The game had to be abandoned due to bad weather.
They abandoned their attempt to recapture the castle.
Because of the fog, they abandoned their idea of driving.
They were accused of abandoning their socialist principles.
Rescuers had abandoned all hope of finding any more survivors.
They drank and smoked with reckless abandon.
She abandoned herself to grief.
We waited for the storm to abate.
A land where meandering rivers flow through breathtaking scenery and beside magnificent abbeys and castles.
Abbreviate.
Abbreviate.
Information technology is usually abbreviated to IT.
ABC.
ABC. The ABCs of your computer.
Abdomen.
Abdomen.
Acute abdominal pains.
Abduct.
Abduct.
The diplomat was abducted on his way to the airport.
Child abduction.
I abhor discrimination of any kind.
Abhor.
Abhor.
Abide.
Abide.
Mr. Major insisted that the government would abide by normal parliamentary procedures. I can't abide the idea of them getting married.
I can't abide that man. He's so self-satisfied.
Ability.
Ability.
The ability to walk.
The health centre serves all patients, regardless of their ability to pay.
The test measures your mathematical ability.
Mixed ability classes.
Students of average ability.
There are musicians of all abilities. He showed his abilities as a leader.
Manageability. He completed the job to the best of his ability.
Abject.
Abject.
An abject apology.
But for some, who didn't get the grades they hoped for, there's abject misery.
Able.
Able.
One of my more able students.
Washable.
Unbreakable.
Lovable.
Knowledgeable. Comfortable.
Unbelievably.
I've always wanted to be able to speak Japanese.
I'd like to do more gardening, but I never seem able to find the time. I haven't been able to read that report yet.
Abnormal.
Abnormal.
Abnormal behavior.
An abnormal level of cholesterol.
My parents thought it was abnormal for a boy to be interested in ballet.
An abnormally high pulse rate.
Aboard.
Aboard.
They finally went aboard the plane.
Aboard.
Aboard.
The plane crashed, killing all 200 people aboard. The boat swayed as he stepped aboard.
All aboard.
Abode.
Abode.
Welcome to my humble abode.
A homeless person with no fixed abode.
Abode.
This would have allowed the right of abode to all citizens in any part of the country.
Abolish.
Abolish.
Slavery was abolished in the U.S. in the 19th century.
A-bomb.
A-bomb.
Abominable.
Abominable.
Abominable cruelty. Mavis behaved abominably.
Abominate.
Abominate.
He abominated racism.
Abound.
Abound.
Rumours abound as to the reasons for his resignation.
Examples of this abound in her book. The forests abound with deer, birds, and squirrels.
About.
About.
A book about politics.
She said something about leaving town.
He lied about his age.
About that car of yours. How much are you selling it for?
What's he on about?
It's about Tommy, Doctor. He's been sick again.
Naturally, my mother wanted to know all about it.
I'm really worried about Jack.
She's upset about missing the party.
We spent the whole afternoon walking about town. Books were scattered about the room.
There's something really strange about Liza. What I like about the job is that it's never boring.
Leadership is all about getting your team to cooperate.
Joe sensed fear and jealousy all about her.
I live about 10 miles away.
A tiny computer about as big as a postcard.
We left the restaurant at round about 10:30.
People were rushing about trying to find the driver. Cushions were scattered about on the chairs.
Is Derek about? There's a phone call for him.
Quick, let's go while there's no one about.
I hope she hasn't caught flu. There's a lot of it about. She might get temporary work, but there's not much about.
I was about ready to leave when somebody rang the doorbell.
Have you finished? Just about.
It's just about the worst mistake anyone could make.
He quickly turned about and walked away.
I've never smoked in my life, and I'm not about to start now.
We were just about to leave when Jerry arrived.
Work was about to start on a new factory building.
He was a quiet chap, married with kids. That's about it, really.
There's some cheese in the fridge, and that's about it.
And what was all that about sending him your regards?
Go and see what's the matter, and while you're about it you can fetch me my sweater.
It's all about money and who's got the most.
If we don't do something about it, the problem is going to get worse.
What can be done about the rising levels of pollution?
What about Jack? We can't just leave him here.
I'm feeling hungry. How about you?
How about a salad for lunch?
Above.
Above.
Our office is above the hairdresser's.
He had a bruise just above his left eye.
I heard a strange noise coming from the room above.
The great bird hovered high above our heads.
50 metres above sea level.
Tonight, temperatures should be just above freezing.
Free medical care for pensioners aged 65 and above.
Prize winners must have gained marks of 80% or above. The salaries we offer are well above average. Many employers value personality above experience or qualifications.
Max is hard-working, cheerful, and above all, honest.
Medals awarded for bravery above and beyond the call of duty.
You can always hear her voice above everybody else's.
He never rose above the rank of corporal.
Officers of the rank of major and above.
We just obey orders from above.
As mentioned above, there is a service charge. Write to the address above for further information.
For the above reasons, the management has no choice but to close the factory.
If none of the above applies to you, you may be able to reclaim tax.
He gets a travel allowance over and above his existing salary.
Many ministers seem to regard themselves as being above the law.
Ever since he'd given her that power of attorney, she'd been getting above herself.
Even the king's closest advisers were not above suspicion.
Eileen's not above flirting with the boss when it suits her.
The abridged edition was published in 1988.
Abroad.
I've never lived abroad before.
She often goes abroad on business.
We never travelled abroad when we were kids.
A lot of goods are imported from abroad.
The books about Harry Potter have been very popular both at home and abroad.
There were rumors abroad that she was planning to resign.
Abrupt. An abrupt change of plan.
The bus came to an abrupt halt.
Sorry, I didn't mean to be so abrupt.
Absence.
Ms. Layton will be in charge during my absence.
Her work involved repeated absences from home.
A complete absence of any kind of planning.
In the absence of any evidence, the police had to let Myers go.
A group that were conspicuous by their absence from the awards ceremony.
She's been given leave of absence to attend a computer course.
Absence makes the heart grow fonder.
Absent.
Absent.
Students who are regularly absent from school.
Plans to force absent fathers to pay child maintenance.
Local women were conspicuously absent from the meeting.
The dull, absent look on her face implied boredom.
Had not had the benefit of that lovely electricity for long, but how I did miss it when it absented itself.
Absolute.
Absolute.
I have absolute confidence in her.
We don't know with absolute certainty that the project will succeed.
Some of the stuff on TV is absolute rubbish.
How did you do that? You're an absolute genius.
That meal last night cost an absolute fortune.
We need absolute proof that he took the money.
An absolute monarch.
Parents used to have absolute power over their children.
You have an absolute right to refuse medical treatment.
She believed in the importance of moral absolutes.
In absolute terms, wages have risen, but not in comparison with the cost of living.
Absolve.
Absolve.
He cannot be absolved of all responsibility for the accident.
Absorb.
Absorb.
Plants absorb nutrients from the soil.
Water and salts are absorbed into our bloodstream.
Her capacity to absorb information is amazing.
The movement and noise of the machines absorbed him completely.
Judith lay on the settee, absorbed in her book.
California absorbs many of the illegal immigrants to the U.S.
We were soon absorbed into local village life. Darker surfaces absorb heat. The beer industry had absorbed a doubling of federal tax in 1991. Defense spending absorbs almost 20% of the country's wealth.
A well-designed sports shoe should absorb the impact on your feet.
Abstain.
Abstain.
6 countries voted for the change, 5 voted against, and 2 abstained.
Pilots must abstain from alcohol for 24 hours before flying.
Abstract.
Abstract.
The ability to translate abstract ideas into words.
By the age of 7, children are capable of thinking in abstract terms.
Human beings are the only creatures capable of abstract thought.
The abstract nature of beauty. Talking about crime in the abstract just isn't enough.
Absurd.
Absurd.
It seems quite absurd to expect anyone to drive for 3 hours just for a 20-minute meeting.
It seems an absurd idea.
Duncan laughed at the absurdity of the situation.
Some of the stories he tells verge on the absurd.
Abundance.
Abundance.
An abundance of wavy red hair.
One quality the team possessed in abundance was fighting spirit.
Abuse.
Abuse.
Several cases of child abuse. Many children suffer racial abuse at school.
An independent committee will look into alleged human rights abuses.
Government officials' abuse of power.
A self-monitoring tax system is clearly open to abuse.
Vandalism and verbal abuse directed at old people.
The other driver started hurling abuse at me.
She was sexually abused as a child.
Williams abused his position as mayor to give jobs to his friends.
Morris abused the trust the firm had showed in him. People who abuse the system. The proportion of drinkers who abuse alcohol is actually quite small.
Many soldiers in Belfast are verbally abused.
He came to the help of another driver who was being racially abused by 3 white passengers.
James abused his body for years with heroin and cocaine.
Solvent abuse.
Solvent abuse.
Abyss.
Abyss.
The country might plunge into the abyss of economic ruin.
At that time, Bosnia was standing on the edge of an abyss.
The gaping abyss between these grand buildings and my own miserable home.
Academy.
Academy. The American Academy of Arts and Letters.
A military academy. The Royal Academy of Music.
Accede.
Accede.
The doctor's refusal to accede to his patient's request.
Accelerate.
Accelerate.
Measures to accelerate the rate of economic growth.
The car accelerated smoothly away.
Accent.
Accent.
He had a strong Irish accent.
In the word dinner, the accent is on the first syllable.
Use makeup to accent your cheekbones and eyes.
Accommodation with the accent on comfort. Accept.
Accept.
Rick accepted her offer of coffee.
He accepted the invitation to stay with us.
His school reports said that he is always ready to accept a challenge.
Please accept this small gift.
They offered me a job and I accepted.
He accepted a glass of water from Helen.
He readily accepted her invitation.
He's not going to change, and you just have to accept it.
We have to accept that this is not an ideal world.
He can't accept the fact that his problems are his own fault.
Students accepted by Stanford Law School had very high scores on the LSAT.
They have accepted him as the representative of the company.
Random House accepted the book for publication.
The children gradually began to accept her as one of the family.
It often takes years for immigrants to be accepted into the host community.
The government has accepted the resignation of a senior army commander.
Please accept my sincere apologies.
Sorry, we don't accept traveller's checks.
Be prepared to accept the advice of members of staff.
She has accepted your explanation as to why you didn't attend the meeting.
Access.
Access.
Access to the papers is restricted to senior management.
Cats should always have access to fresh, clean water.
We're trying to improve access for disabled visitors.
A villa with easy access to the sea.
Access is by means of a small door on the right.
Access to the restrooms is through the foyer.
My ex-husband has access to the children once a week.
Users can access their voicemail remotely.
The police managed to gain access through an upstairs window.
It is seen as an effective means of business communication where relevant staff have access to a computer network.
Accessory.
Accessory.
Bathroom accessories such as mirrors and towel rails.
Fashion accessories.
A set of fully matching clothes and accessories.
An accessory to murder.
Accident.
Accident.
Over 70,000 people are seriously injured every year in road accidents.
The accident happened at the junction of Forest Road and Pine Walk.
A train accident.
Ken had an accident at work and had to go to hospital.
I'm sorry about breaking the vase. It was an accident.
He died in a climbing accident in the Himalayas. She was injured in a freak accident when a wall suddenly collapsed. I had a slight accident with your coffee. They lost their lives in a tragic accident.
My third baby was an accident.
It is no accident that men fill most of the top jobs in nursing, while women remain on the lower grades.
The boats are being left adrift. It's an accident waiting to happen.
Everyone knows that hideous accidents happen, however precise modern weapons are supposed to be.
I met her quite by accident.
The discovery was made almost by accident.
The pilot, whether by accident or design, made the plane do a sharp turn.
Acclaim.
Acclaim.
His work was acclaimed by art critics. The young singer is enjoying critical acclaim.
Their recordings have won great acclaim.
Accommodate.
Accommodate.
He bought a huge house to accommodate his library. The ballroom can accommodate 400 people.
The island was used to accommodate child refugees.
We've made every effort to accommodate your point of view.
Her eyes took a while to accommodate to the darkness.
Accompany.
Accompany.
Children under 14 must be accompanied by an adult. Wherever her husband went, she would accompany him.
Daniel wanted Liz to accompany him on the violin.
The disease is accompanied by sneezing and fever.
Please see accompanying booklet for instructions.
Your passport application form should be accompanied by 2 recent photographs. Accomplice.
Accomplice.
After the robbery, the men escaped in a stolen car driven by an accomplice.
Accomplish.
Accomplish.
We have accomplished all we set out to do. Mission accomplished.
Accord.
Accord.
These results are in accord with earlier research.
It is important to the success of any firm that its partners should be in complete accord. The Helsinki Accord on Human Rights.
You will not be accorded any special treatment.
Every school accords high priority to the quality of teaching.
There was a silence as the women turned with one accord to stare at Doreen.
He decided to go of his own accord.
The door seemed to move of its own accord.
The punishments accorded with the current Code of Discipline.
Article 47 may only be used in accordance with international law.
Use this product only in accordance with the manufacturer's instructions.
Accordingly.
Accordingly.
Catherine still considered him a child and treated him accordingly.
Some of the laws were contradictory. Accordingly, measures were taken to clarify them.
Accordion.
Accordion.
Account.
Account.
He was too shocked to give an account of what had happened.
A blow-by-blow account of how England lost to Portugal.
Chomsky's account of how children learn their first language.
Eyewitness accounts told of the unprovoked shooting of civilians. This gives a first-hand account of the war.
My salary is paid into my bank account.
I've opened an account with Barclays Bank.
My husband and I have a joint account.
Can you charge this to my account, please?
An unlimited use internet account.
James left the restaurant, settling his account by credit card. Our sales manager has secured several big accounts recently. As she grew up, her father was of no account to her.
Perhaps she could put some of her talents to good account by helping us.
The people responsible for the accident have never been brought to account.
Kevin gave a good account of himself in today's game.
There needn't be any more worries on that account.
Bentley was, by his own account, oversensitive to criticism.
On no account must you disturb me.
Carrie decided to do a little research on her own account. Please don't change your plans on my account.
It has, from all accounts, been a successful marriage.
The accounts for last year showed a profit of $2 million.
Eileen works in accounts.
She was told to wear flat shoes on account of her back problem.
These figures do not take account of changes in the rate of inflation.
Bank account.
I'd like to open a bank account.
Accumulate.
Accumulate.
It is unjust that a privileged few should continue to accumulate wealth.
Fat tends to accumulate around the hips and thighs. The accumulation of data.
Accuracy.
Accuracy.
He passes the ball with unerring accuracy. Worries about the accuracy of government statistics.
Accurate.
Accurate.
The brochure tries to give a fair and accurate description of each hotel.
Police believe Derek gave a reasonably accurate account of what happened.
The evidence she gave to the court was not strictly accurate.
It is difficult to get accurate figures on population numbers.
The cutter is accurate to within a millimetre.
An accurate shot.
Accurate bowling.
It's impossible to predict the weather accurately.
Accuse.
Accuse.
He was accused of murder.
Smith accused her of lying.
The professor stands accused of stealing his students' ideas and publishing them.
Accustom.
Accustom. It took a while for me to accustom myself to all the new rules and regulations.
Ace.
Ace.
The ace of hearts.
I've got a pair of aces.
A soccer ace.
Cycling ace Chris Boardman. The party was ace.
I aced the history test.
An ace marksman.
That $50 is my ace in the hole.
Have an ace up your sleeve.
The team came within an ace of winning the championship.
The Americans hold most of the aces in this technology.
Ache.
Ache.
His feet were aching from standing so long.
I'm aching for sleep.
He ached to reach out and hold her close.
Sarah ached with sadness that her brother was so ill.
Tim's heart was aching for her.
Ache.
Ache.
A stomachache.
A dull ache throbbed at the back of David's head.
Apart from the usual aches and pains, she felt all right. The ache of his loneliness.
I'm feeling tired and achy. Achieve.
Achieve.
She eventually achieved her goal of becoming a professor.
Wilson has achieved considerable success as an artist.
Frances achieved very good exam results.
We want all our students to achieve within their chosen profession.
Acid.
Acid.
Sulfuric acid. A juicy apple with a slightly acid flavour.
Blueberry bushes need a very acid soil.
People ask if the team is good enough. This match will be the acid test.
I was expecting another of his acid remarks, but he remained silent.
Acknowledge.
Acknowledge.
The family acknowledge the need for change.
He acknowledges that when he's tired he gets bad-tempered.
Claire acknowledged that she was guilty.
The government must acknowledge what is happening and do something about it.
Maybe you are right, she acknowledged.
This is a fact that most smokers readily acknowledge.
The Brazilian coach acknowledged the talent of his players.
The film festival is acknowledged as an event of international importance.
The mill produces what is widely acknowledged to be the finest wool in the world.
Both defendants refused to acknowledge the authority of the court.
Many of the poor acknowledged him as their spiritual leader.
We wish to acknowledge the support of the university.
Tom acknowledged her presence by a brief glance. I would be grateful if you would acknowledge receipt of this letter.
Acorn.
Acorn.
Acquaint.
Acquaint.
You need to acquaint the police with the facts.
I need to acquaint myself with the new regulations.
Acquire.
Acquire.
Manning hoped to acquire valuable works of art as cheaply as possible.
The council acquired the land using a compulsory purchase order.
The college acquired a reputation for very high standards.
He spent years acquiring his skills as a surgeon.
Elsie acquired a good knowledge of Chinese.
For many people, her dry humor is an acquired taste.
She had acquired a taste for European beer.
Acquit.
Acquit.
All the defendants were acquitted.
The judge directed the jury to acquit Phillips of the murder.
They did acquit themselves well with heavier strings and a flat pick, but in the main they were seen as finger-picking guitars.
Acre.
Acre.
They owned 200 acres of farmland.
A 200-acre wood.
Acrobat.
Acrobat.
Across.
Across.
The first flight across the Atlantic.
They ran straight across the road.
We'll have to swim across.
We'd got halfway across before Philip realized he'd left his money at home.
We gazed across the valley.
There's Brendan. Why don't you go across and say hello?
The referee looked across at his linesman before awarding the penalty.
He walked across to where I was sitting.
A deep crack across the ceiling.
The only bridge across the river.
Do you think this shirt is too tight across the shoulders?
Someone's parked right across the entrance to the driveway.
My best friend lives across the road. He knew that just across the border lay freedom.
Across the street from where we're standing, you can see the old churchyard.
The woman sitting across from me on the train.
A TV series that became popular across 5 continents.
Teachers are expected to teach a range of subjects right across the curriculum.
The river is 2 kilometers across.
Act.
Act.
The new president's first act should be to end the war.
A thoughtless act.
An act of violence.
How many acts of kindness?
The act of writing a list can help to calm you down.
Lindsay paused in the act of putting down the phone.
The Housing and Community Development Act of 1977.
An act of parliament.
Mike played the loving husband in front of the children, but it was all an act.
Be natural. Don't feel you have to put on an act.
I arrived at the theatre late and missed the first act.
The beginning of Act 3.
The argument was just part of their act.
The band is one of many acts that have been booked for the concert.
The company acted correctly in sacking him.
The jury decided that Walker had acted in self-defense.
The UN must act now to restore democracy.
Politicians will only act when enough people demand that they do something.
They acted unreasonably when they turned down Jill's application. He's been acting strangely ever since his mom died.
Pip acted as if he was better than anyone else.
Stop acting like a baby.
She acted with dignity.
When he's angry, he acts the fool.
That guy is acting crazy.
Stella felt unnatural in their company, as if she was acting a part.
Why does he act as if he was stupid?
I first started acting when I was 12 years old.
She is acting the role of Lady Macbeth 6 evenings a week.
The movie is very well acted.
The padding acts as a cushion if the player falls or is hit by the ball.
Disinfectants act on bacteria in 2 main ways.
Mackin, a solicitor, is acting for the young people in their case against the country council.
I am acting on behalf of the bank.
For today's time-stressed parents, each day becomes a juggling act. A hymn should be an act of worship in its own right and not something to dispel a silence.
He has been a very successful captain and will be a hard act to follow.
You need to get your act together if you're going to find the right house to buy.
Active.
Active.
Games for active youngsters.
She's over 80 but is still very active.
My father always led a very active life.
A child with a very active imagination.
He became politically active at college.
The Bureau is active in promoting overseas investment.
Encourage students to take an active part in discussions.
She took an active interest in local charities. The importance of active participation by elderly people in the life of the community.
We're taking active steps to deal with the problem.
We maintain active links with other European universities.
He is an active member of the Labour Party.
The virus is active even at low temperatures.
Sexually active teenagers.
The volcano became active last year with a series of eruptions.
Nicotine, the active ingredient in tobacco.
Actual.
Actual.
I'm not joking. Those were his actual words. I know Germany won, but I can't tell you the actual score.
Interest is only charged on the actual amount borrowed. In actual fact, there is little evidence to support the allegations.
The programme starts at 8, but the actual film doesn't start until 8:30.
Acute.
Acute.
The housing shortage is more acute than first thought.
Acute pain.
Acute embarrassment.
Acute anxiety.
Acute arthritis.
Young children have a particularly acute sense of smell.
Simon's vague manner concealed an acute mind.
An acute analysis of Middle Eastern politics.
AD.
AD. The 1st century AD. 54 AD.
Adapt.
Adapt. The children are finding it hard to adapt to the new school. Flowers, which are well adapted to harsh winters. The ability to adapt is a definite asset in this job. How do these insects adapt themselves to new environments? The car has been adapted to take unleaded gas. These teaching materials can be adapted for older children. Many children buy books after they have been adapted for television. She lives in a specially adapted flat.
Add.
Add. If the mixture seems dry, add water. Do you want to add your name to the list? Suzuki has added extra doors to its sports off-roader. Material about recent research has been added to this new edition. Add 7 and 5 to make 12. For tax purposes, your pension and earnings are added together.
Add £2.20 to the cost for postage.
Spell checking your document adds time to the process. Sales tax adds to the price. And I don't care what you think, she added defiantly.
Is there anything you'd like to add, David?
Everyone will be invited to vote, he said, adding that voting is likely to be via the web. I was refused accommodation, not, I hasten to add, on account of my appearance. She was trying to entertain us, unsuccessfully, I might add. We've added value to the information by organizing it.
Champagne always adds a touch of glamour to the occasion. Coloured glass can be added for effect.
The company provides cheap internet access. In addition, it makes shareware freely available. In addition to his movie work, Redford is known as a champion of environmental causes.
Address.
Address.
What's your new address? I can give you the address of a good attorney.
They have changed the address of their website.
An address to the European Parliament. The new president delivered his inaugural address in Creole. That letter was addressed to me. Send a stamped, self-addressed envelope. Our products address the needs of real users. Marlowe now addressed himself to the task of searching the room. She turned to address the man on her left. You will have to address your comments to our head office. He addressed an audience of 10,000 supporters. The president should be addressed as Mr. President.
Adequate.
Adequate. Farmers have been slow to make adequate provision for their retirement. Some creams we tested failed to give adequate protection against UV light. The standard of his work is barely adequate. The company has yet to provide an adequate explanation for its actions. Are the parking facilities adequate for 50 cars? The lunchtime menu is more than adequate to satisfy the biggest appetite. Her performance was adequate, but lacked originality.
Adhere.
Adhere. The eggs of these fish adhere to plant leaves.
Adherent.
Adherent. Adherents of the Greek Orthodox Church. The anti-globalization movement is attracting new adherents to its principles.
Adhesion.
Adhesion.
He adds that the line between accession and adhesion is poorly defined.
Adieu.
Adieu. He bid her adieu.
Adjacent.
Adjacent. We stayed in adjacent rooms. The building adjacent to the library.
Adjective.
Adjective. An adjectival phrase.
Adjoin.
Adjoin. A vacant plot of land adjoins his house. Adjoining rooms.
Adjure.
Adjure. Gwen adjured him to be truthful. Adjust.
Adjust.
They'll soon settle in. Kids are very good at adjusting. It took a few seconds for her eyes to adjust to the darkness. My parents had trouble adjusting to living in an apartment. It took time to adjust myself to motherhood. Check and adjust the brakes regularly. Taste the soup and adjust the seasoning. If your employment status changes, your tax code will be adjusted accordingly. He paused to adjust his spectacles.
Administration order.
Administration.
Administration order.
We're looking for someone with experience in administration. The health service spends too much on administration. The college administration. The Kennedy administration. The problem has been ignored by successive administrations. The administration of justice. The administration of sedatives.
Admiral.
Admiral.
Admire.
Admire. I really admire the way she brings up those kids all on her own. Lewis was much admired for his work on medieval literature. We stopped halfway to admire the view. Sal stood back to admire her work.
Admit.
Admit. Okay, so maybe I was a little bit scared, Jenny admitted. You may not like her, but you have to admit that she's good at her job. Paul admitted to me that he sometimes feels jealous of my friendship with Stanley. I must admit, I didn't actually do anything to help her. Admit it, I'm right, aren't I? Dana admitted feeling hurt by what I had said. Phillips openly admits to having an alcohol problem. Green admitted causing death by reckless driving. A quarter of all workers admit to taking time off when they are not ill. After questioning, he admitted to the murder. No organization has admitted responsibility for the bombing. Only ticket holders will be admitted into the stadium. Drake was admitted into the club in 1997. What time was she admitted?
Admonish.
Admonish. The witness was admonished for failing to answer the question.
Ado.
Ado. So without further ado, I'll now ask Mr. Davis to open the debate.
Adopt.
Adopt. Sally was adopted when she was 4. The couple are unable to have children of their own, but hope to adopt. Kim adopts a Southern accent when speaking to family back home. Congress finally adopted the law after a 2-year debate. Stevens became a Muslim and adopted the name Yusuf Islam. Becoming a member of a society means adopting its values.
Adore.
Adore. Betty adores her grandchildren. I simply adore chocolate.
Adorn.
Adorn. Church walls adorned with religious paintings.
Adult.
Adult. Some children find it difficult to talk to adults.
The adults have white bodies and grey backs.
An adult lion. The adult population.
He lived most of his adult life in Scotland.
Dealing with problems in an adult way. That wasn't very adult of you. The film is rated R for language and adult themes.
Advance.
Advance. One of the great technological advances of the 20th century. A major advance. Recent advances in genetics have raised moral questions. An advance on previous treatments. The advances made in the understanding of mental handicap.
The enemy's advance on St. Petersburg.
A $500 advance. Krebs decided to ask for an advance on his salary. A line of U.S. tanks slowly advanced. Troops advanced on the rebel stronghold. The army advanced across the plain. Our understanding of human genetics has advanced considerably. The group's research has done much to advance our knowledge of the HIV virus.
Will they advance you some money until you get your first paycheck?
I advanced $1,500 to Kramer last Thursday. The meeting has been advanced to 10 o'clock.
Advantage.
Advantage. Her experience meant that she had a big advantage over her opponent. Younger workers tend to be at an advantage when applying for jobs. It might be to your advantage to take a computer course of some kind. One of the many advantages of living in New York is that you can eat out at almost any time of day.
This printer has several advantages over conventional printers.
Adventure.
Adventure. A great adventure. Ahab's adventures at sea. An adventure story.
Adverb.
Adverb.
Adversary.
Adversary. His old adversary.
Advertise.
Advertise. They no longer advertise alcohol or cigarettes at sporting events. Many companies will only advertise in the Sunday paper. The inn is advertised as being from the early 16th century. Colleges and universities have found that it pays to advertise. A poster advertising the concert. I see they're advertising for a new sales director.
Advice.
Advice.
You should have followed my advice. Advice on saving energy. I need some advice about my computer.
On her doctor's advice, Smith decided to take early retirement.
Advocate.
Advocate.
Extremists were openly advocating violence.
Those who advocate for doctor-assisted suicide say the terminally ill should not have to suffer.
She's a passionate advocate of natural childbirth. An advocate for the disabled.
Aerial.
Aerial. An aerial attack. Aerial photographs. An aerial view of the Three Gorges Dam project.
Aero.
Aerodynamics. An aero engine.
Aero.
Aesthetic.
Aesthetic.
From an aesthetic point of view, it's a nice design. A work of great aesthetic appeal. Aesthetically pleasing.
A new aesthetic.
Afar.
Afar.
Affable.
Affable.
An affable guy.
Affair.
Affair.
The Watergate affair. The whole affair was a disaster. The party was a very grand affair. He had an affair with his boss that lasted 6 years. The computer was one of those little portable affairs.
Affect.
Affect.
The areas affected by the hurricane. A disease that affects the central nervous system. Decisions which affect our lives. Trading has been adversely affected by the downturn in consumer spending. We were all deeply affected by her death. As usual, Simon affected complete boredom. He used to affect a foreign accent.
Affection.
Affection.
Bart had a deep affection for the old man. She looked back on those days with affection. Their father never showed them much affection. The church was held in great affection by the local residents.
Affinity.
Affinity.
Is remarkable affinity with animals. The affinity between Christian and Chinese concepts of the spirit.
Affirm.
Affirm.
The general affirmed rumors of an attack. A spokesman for the company affirmed that a merger was likely. He claims that modern physics affirms his Christian beliefs.
Afflict. Afflict.
A country afflicted by famine.
Affluent.
Affluent.
Affluent families.
The affluent Côte d'Azur.
Afford.
Afford.
The room affords a beautiful view over the city. It afforded her the opportunity to improve her tennis skills. The new law will afford protection to employees.
Afire. Afire.
One of the boats had been set afire.
Aflame.
Aflame.
Most of the city was aflame.
Trees aflame with autumn leaves.
Afloat.
Afloat.
The Treasury borrowed £40 billion just to stay afloat.
Somehow we kept the ship afloat.
Afraid.
Afraid.
There's no need to be afraid.
Many children are afraid of the dark. I was a little afraid of him when I first met him. Some old people are afraid of going out alone. Zoe was afraid to go back into the house.
He was afraid that the other kids would laugh at him.
She was half afraid that he would say no.
I didn't tell her, because I was afraid of upsetting her.
The government was afraid of the reaction from the public.
Don't be afraid to ask for help.
Afresh.
Afresh.
He moved to America to start afresh.
After.
After the war, many soldiers stayed in France. I go swimming every day after work. Do you believe in life after death? The first attack started just after midnight. David went to bed straight after supper.
After you'd called the police, what did you do?
Zimmermann changed his name after he left Germany. People still remember the 1958 revolution and what came after. After leaving school, McKay worked in a restaurant for a year. 10 years after he bought the painting, Carswell discovered that it was a fake. His car was outside your house the morning after Bob's engagement party. I'll see you again tomorrow or the day after. She retired from politics the year after she received the Nobel Prize. Not long after the wedding, his wife became ill. The family moved to Hardingham in June 1983, and Sarah's first child was born soon after.
After 10 minutes, remove the cake from the oven.
You'll get used to it after a while.
After months of negotiation, an agreement was finally reached. Whose name is after yours on the list? The date should be written after the address.
After football, tennis is my favourite sport.
The UK is the world's third largest arms producer, after the USA and Russia. The movie starts at 7:15. Go after him and apologize. I heard someone running after me, and a voice called my name. Good luck, she called after me as I left. Harry stood in the doorway, gazing after her. Remember to close the door after you. I spend all day cleaning up after the kids. I'm not surprised he walked out after the way she treated him.
After your letter, I didn't think I'd ever see you again.
How can you treat me like this after all I've done for you?
Turn left after the hotel.
After a mile, you will come to a crossroads.
His name is Alessandro, after his grandfather. It was named Waterloo Bridge after the famous battle.
A painting after Rembrandt. Do you need the copier? After you. After you with that knife, please. An after-dinner speech. After-school activities.
Again.
Can you say that again? I didn't hear. I'll never go there again. Mr. Khan's busy. Can you try again later? In 1997, the family moved house yet again. Once again, Drew was under arrest. She stayed and nursed him back to health again. It's great to have you home again. And again, these workshops will benefit the community widely. What did you say your name was again?
Against.
Every council member voted against the proposal. Those who are campaigning against the new road.
He advised me against traveling.
Mr. Howard has declared that he is against all forms of racism. The fight against terrorism. They got married against her parents' wishes. She has been kept in the house against her will. The use of certain drugs is against the law. It's against my principles to borrow money. There ought to be a law against it. Gambati was injured in last Saturday's game against the Lions.
We'll be competing against the best companies in Europe.
Violence against elderly people.
Crimes against humanity.
Discrimination against women. There had been death threats against prison staff. Your lack of experience could count against you. The regulations tend to work against smaller companies. The sound of the rain drumming against my window. The car skidded, and we could hear the crunch of metal against metal. There was a ladder propped up against the wall. The younger policeman was leaning against the bureau with his arms folded. Sailing against the wind. She dived down and swam out strongly against the current. He could see a line of figures silhouetted against the sky.
It is important to know what colours look good against your skin.
The reforms were introduced against a background of social unrest. The pound has fallen 10% against the dollar. She checked the contents of the box against the list. The cost of the proposed research needs to be balanced against its benefits. Insurance against accident and sickness. A cream to protect against sunburn. A vaccine which is effective against pneumonia. He has always emphatically denied the allegations against him. The evidence against you is overwhelming.
Age.
Francis is the same age as me. Experts disagree over the age of the drawings. Dad retired at the age of 56.
In Britain, schooling starts at age 5.
She was just over 16 years of age.
At my age, it's quite difficult getting up the stairs.
People over the age of 65. She's tall for her age, isn't she? What's the minimum age for getting a driver's license? You're not allowed to buy alcohol. You're underage.
The normal retirement age is 65. When you get to old age, everything seems to take longer.
The early teens are often a difficult age. High blood pressure increases with age. Some of the furniture was showing signs of age. We are living in the age of technology. Molecular biology is pushing medicine into a new age.
He was worried to see how much she'd aged.
The experience had aged him in advance of his years.
The buildings are aging and some are unsafe.
Cheddar cheese ages well.
The whiskey is aged for at least 10 years.
Here's some interesting statage about the game.
Agent.
Agent.
Our agent in Rio deals with all our Brazilian business. We're acting as agents for Mr. Watson. My agent has a new script for me to look at. A literary agent. An intelligence agent. An FBI agent.
An undercover agent.
Soap is a cleansing agent. Technological advances are the chief agents of change.
Aggregate.
Aggregate.
The smaller minorities got an aggregate of 1,327 votes. In the aggregate, women outlive men by 7 or more years.
Manchester United won 2-1 on aggregate.
An increase in the aggregate production.
Sheila's earnings from all sources aggregated £100,000.
A wife's income is no longer aggregated with that of her husband.
Aggression.
Television violence can encourage aggression in children. Our dogs have never shown aggression towards other dogs. An unprovoked act of aggression. Athenian aggression against Persia.
Aggrieved. Aggrieved.
An aggrieved tone of voice. The aggrieved party.
Agile.
Agile.
Dogs are surprisingly agile. He was physically strong and mentally agile. With surprising agility, Carl darted across the road.
Agitate.
Agitate.
Unions agitating for higher pay. His family are agitating to get him freed. I must warn you that any mention of Claire agitates your grandmother. Her husband died 14 years ago. He should have finished at university long ago, but he kept taking extra courses. The little girl you saw a moment ago was my niece. Tom got a letter from him just a little while ago. They moved to a new house some time ago.
We had our bicentenary celebrations not that long ago.
Agony.
Agony.
The agony of arthritis. I was in agony. He groaned in agony. It was agony not knowing if she would live. He was in agonies of remorse.
Agree.
Agree.
Teenagers and their parents rarely agree. If she felt he was right, she would agree with him. Most people nowadays would agree that a good pub is one of our best traditions. We don't agree on everything, of course. We have to talk. Absolutely, Meredith replied. I couldn't agree more. I suggested we go somewhere for the weekend, and she agreed at once. No one really knows why he agreed to do the film. My sister won't agree to our mother going into a nursing home.
Agriculture.
Agriculture.
More than 75% of the land is used for agriculture. Agricultural land.
Agricultural labourers.
Ah.
Ah, there you are.
Ahead.
Ahead.
He kept his gaze fixed on the car ahead. A hill loomed ahead of them. We could see the lights of Las Vegas up ahead. The clinic was now in sight, some way ahead. The river is 8 miles away, dead ahead. Henry hurried on ahead. He stared straight ahead. The ship forged ahead through the thin ice. There were 4 people ahead of me at the doctor's. You have a long trip ahead of you.
Problems may lie ahead. We do not foresee any major changes in the years ahead.
Unless we plan ahead, we are going to be in a mess. I cook rice 2 or 3 hours ahead. Can you tell me ahead of time if you're coming?
He's giving a series of concerts in London ahead of his international tour.
Getting ahead at work is the most important thing to her at the moment. This design is light years ahead in performance and comfort. Coleridge was in many ways far ahead of his time. 2 shots from Gardner put the Giants 80-75 ahead. We are 10 points ahead in the polls. At this stage, Smith appeared to be ahead of his rivals.
Aid. Aid.
Foreign aid from many countries poured into the famine area. Convoys delivering humanitarian aid.
A substantial aid program.
He has been granted legal aid. Father Poole walked painfully with the aid of a stick.
I didn't speak any French, but a nice man came to my aid.
A video is a useful aid in the classroom. A hearing aid. An index to aid the reader. Mrs. Coxon was aided in looking after the children by her niece. Welfare spending aids economic development in 3 ways.
Ale.
Ale.
Aim.
Aim.
The aim of the research is to find new food sources. The main aim of the course is to improve your writing. A campaign with the aim of helping victims of crime. Teamwork is required in order to achieve these aims. A policy which sets out the school's aims and objectives. Val's aim was very good. We aim to finish by Friday. An initiative aimed at reducing road accidents. We're aiming for a big improvement. Denver aimed his gun, but did not. The pilot was aiming for the. Denver aimed his gun, but did not shoot. The pilot was aiming for the runway, but came down in a nearby field.
Air. Air.
Let's go outside and get some fresh air.
You need to put some air in the tires.
There was a strong smell of burning in the air.
I'd prefer to travel by air. The victims of Britain's worst air disaster.
Air travel was growing rapidly. Air traffic congestion. His brother died in an air crash. She had an air of quiet confidence. She looked at him with a determined air. Staff will get a chance to ask questions and air their views.
KPBS airs such popular children's programs as Barney and Sesame Street.
The program is due to air next month. I've left my sweater outside to air.
Akin.
Something akin to panic overwhelmed him.
Alarm.
I forgot to set the burglar alarm.
Car alarms are always going off in the street.
A sophisticated alarm system. There is growing alarm at the increase in crime. She looked up in alarm. Scientists have said there is no cause for alarm. I've set the alarm for 7 o'clock. I was still asleep when the alarm went off. I don't want to alarm you, but I can't find the key.
Album.
The band planned to release their new album next week. A photograph album.
Alcohol.
I don't drink alcohol anymore. Alcohol abuse. People with alcohol problems. Low alcohol drinks.
Alert.
The animal raised its head, suddenly alert. Taking notes is one of the best ways to stay alert in lectures. Jack was as mentally alert as a man half his age. The school immediately alerted the police. Campaigns to alert the public to the dangers of HIV. A full-scale flood alert. The bomb alert was raised soon after midnight.
Algebra.
Algebra.
I shuddered at the memory of numerical computations and algebra.
Alibi.
Alibi.
He had a perfect alibi, and the police let him go.
Alien.
Alien.
The alien environment of the city. A way of life that is totally alien to us. Alien cultures. An alien multiracial society. Alien beings from another planet. Illegal aliens entering the country.
Alight.
The car was set alight and pushed over a hill.
Jed's face was alight with excitement. She alighted from the train at 74th Street.
Alike.
Alike.
My mother and I are alike in many ways. The twins were dressed alike. I learned a lot from teachers and students alike.
Alive.
Alive.
It was a bad accident. They're lucky to be alive.
My grandparents are still alive.
We stayed alive by eating berries.
He was kept alive on a life support machine. Apparently, he's alive and well and living in Brazil. Ancient traditions are very much alive in rural areas. Christianity is alive and well in Asia. The sport is still very much alive and kicking in this country. It was the kind of morning when you wake up and feel really alive. Her face was alive with excitement. The whole house was alive with activity.
All.
Have you done all your homework? He had worked all his life in the mine. The boys played video games all day. They were quarreling all the time. Hannah didn't say a single word all the way back home. Almost all of the music was from Italian operas. I've heard it all before.
She'd given up all hope of having a child.
Someone's taken all my books. Will all the girls please stand over here? All children should be taught to swim.
16% of all new cars sold in Western Europe these days are diesel-engined.
They all speak excellent English.
Important changes that will affect all of us. All you need is a hammer and some nails. All I'm asking for is a little respect. I'm doing all I can to help her. I hope all is well with you.
All was dark and silent down by the harbour wall.
Can any of us say in all honesty that we did everything we could? You shouldn't be sitting here by yourself all alone. A strange woman, dressed all in black. If people want more freedom of choice, then I'm all for it. It was a dreadful experience. Never mind, it's all over now. You're getting me all confused. An all-male club. An all-wool coat.
The alley led to the railway bridge.
She found the side alley where the stage door was located. Alligator shoes.
Alligator.
Alligator.
A lot.
A lot.
Try and allot 2 or 3 hours a day to revision.
Each school will be allotted 20 seats.
Everyone who works for the company has been allotted 10 shares.
The department has already spent more than its allotted budget.
Allowance.
Allowance.
His father gives him a monthly allowance of £200.
Do you get an allowance for clothes? Sales staff get a generous mileage allowance or a company car. If you're entitled to sickness allowance, you must claim it from your employer. The recommended daily allowance of vitamin C. Passenger's baggage allowance is £75 per person.
A new tax allowance.
There is always an allowance in insurance premiums for whether someone smokes or not. The budget makes allowances for extra staff when needed.
All round.
All round.
An all-round athlete.
Allude.
Allude.
Allure.
Allure.
The allure of foreign travel. At 50, she had lost none of her sexual allure. Harmonies that never fail to allure the listener. The alluring magic of Hong Kong.
Allusion.
Allusion.
The committee made no allusion to the former president in its report. Eliot's poetry is full of biblical allusions. In his poetry, we find many allusions to the human body.
Ally.
Ally.
A meeting of the European allies.
Ridley was one of the Queen's closest allies.
A staunch ally of President Soares. A network of political allies. She knew she had found an ally in Ted. Exercise is an all-important ally in your campaign to lose weight. Some of the northern cities allied themselves with the emperor.
Alma mater.
Alma mater.
Almanac.
Almanac.
A football almanac. A nautical almanac.
Almighty.
Almighty.
Almond.
Almond.
Stir in the ground almonds and egg.
Almost.
Have you almost finished? Supper's almost ready. It was almost midnight. Almost nothing was done to improve the situation. The story is almost certainly true. He's almost as old as I am. Marcia visits her son almost every day.
Arms.
Arms.
Aloft.
Aloft.
He emerged holding a baby aloft.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Alone.
Alone.
She lives alone. You shouldn't leave a child alone in the house. My wife and I like to spend time alone together away from the kids. It was scary being all alone in a strange city. She was all alone in the world. I cried like a child because I felt so alone. He was left to raise their 2 children alone.
Along.
Along.
I was driving along, thinking about Chris. A group of children walking along in a line. We were driving along Follyfoot Road. She glanced anxiously along the line of faces. He slid his hand along her arm. The palm trees along the shore swayed in the wind. The toolbar along the top of your screen. There were cheering crowds all along Pennsylvania Avenue. Hugo's house is about 200 yards away, along the main street. The bathroom is just along the corridor.
Aloof.
Aloof.
They worked hard, but tended to stay aloof from the local inhabitants. She had always kept herself aloof from the boys in class. Beneath that aloof exterior, Gail is a warm, sympathetic person. Initially, the president remained aloof from the campaign. The doctor held himself somewhat aloof from the rest of the ship's crew.
Aloud.
Aloud.
Joanne, would you read the poem aloud? The pain made him cry aloud. She could have laughed aloud. What did you say? Sorry, I was just thinking aloud.
Alphabet.
Alphabet.
The International Phonetic Alphabet.
Alpine.
Alpine.
Breathtaking alpine scenery. Alpine flowers. Alpine skiing.
Alps.
Already.
Already.
The design of the new house is similar to those that have already been built. The performance had already started when we arrived. You already told me that. Fancy a coffee? No thanks, I already have one. Have you eaten all that food already? Is it 5 o'clock already? Hurry up, we're already late.
Also.
Also.
Information is also available on women's health care. She sings beautifully and also plays the flute and piano. The system was not only complicated but also ineffective. My girlfriend was also called Helen.
Altar.
Altar.
A crucifix above the high altar. The victim was tied to a sacrificial altar.
Altar.
Her face hadn't altered much over the years.
The city centre has altered beyond recognition.
Nothing can alter the fact that the refugees are our responsibility. She had the dress altered for the wedding.
Alternate.
Alternate.
The service runs on alternate days. Alternate blue and red stripes. Arrange the leeks and noodles in alternate layers. The appointment of an alternate director. Periods of depression alternate with excited behavior. She alternated between outrage and sympathy. Twist your body, alternating right and left stretches.
Alternative.
Alternative.
Alternative approaches to learning. Have you any alternative suggestions? An alternative route is along the Via Union, Tucson's alternative radio station. Sources of alternative energy. Tolerance of alternative lifestyles. Acupuncture is widely used by practitioners of alternative medicine. Is there a viable alternative to the present system?
If payment is not received, legal action will be our only alternative.
I had no alternative but to report him to the police.
He quickly assessed the alternatives open to him.
Although.
Although.
Although in poor health, she continued to carry out her duties. We decided to take rooms in Longwood House, although we knew we could not really afford the rent. Although I can't help admiring the man's courage, I do not approve of his methods. You can copy down my answers, although I'm not sure they're right. No, this is my responsibility, although I appreciate your offer.
Altitude.
We're flying at an altitude of 40,000 feet. At high altitudes, it is difficult to get enough oxygen.
altogether.
An old custom that has vanished altogether. Congress could ban the procession altogether. In Canada, the situation is altogether different. This latest problem is altogether more serious. I wasn't altogether happy about Mike staying over. The results were not altogether surprising. There were 5 people altogether. How much do I owe you altogether? Lots of sunshine, wonderful food, and amazing nightlife. Altogether a great vacation.
Aluminium.
Aluminium.
Recycled aluminium cans.
Alumnus.
Alumnus.
Always.
Always.
Always lock your bicycle to something secure.
She'd always assumed that Gabriel was a girl's name.
He hadn't always been a butler. I've always wanted to go to Paris. John's always been keen on music. I'll always remember that day. That woman next door's always complaining.